let me also introduce him. Udit is a strategic leader in sustainability, innovation, and circular economy, driving business growth and ESG transformation in petrochemicals and aerospace. He has 17 years of experience in circular economy, chemical management, and sustainability strategy across global and regional platforms. Over to you, Udit.
Thank you very much. And thank you to Dr. Habu, Hiten, the entire GCPRS and IPMA team for once again having me here. Great pleasure to be with all of you, and I'll try to keep my talk brief to do justice to those who came before me and those yet to come. As it says, I'm going to be speaking about the INC process. I was on the stage last year giving you an update when we had just returned from INC4, and I'm happy to be back here to speak about what can we expect coming up in Geneva in August when we come to INC5.2. Next slide, please. Quick agenda to share with you. I will start with a bit of a recap on what has happened so far in the INC timeline. We will come to the sessions and outcomes. Then the most important part of the presentation is focused on what can we expect at the upcoming session in Geneva. We will then move to what's been happening in the inter-session period between 5.1 and 5.2. And finally, some thoughts about what should the Indian industry be doing in the interim. So let's start. Let's start with the timeline. So next slide, please. We started talking about the issue of plastic pollution in the marine environment, and this was at UNEA 3 when an expert group on marine litter or microplastics was created. This happened in December 2017. Fast forward to March 2019, we came to UNEA 4, and this expert group continues to examine options for global action. So this is how it started to evolve. We came to June 2020 when a group of friends to combat marine plastic pollution was formed, led by Norway and 44 countries, and they wanted to discuss the global agreement, how it could look, what vision could they put together for it. We moved on to November 2020 when an expert group concludes its works, including treaty proposals as part of the final report. 2021 February, we had UNEA 5 Part 1. Now remember, this was the COVID years and we could not have a physical session. So the members of the UNEA decided to have a virtual session, but that was laying the groundwork for what was to come in the physical session, which took place in March 22 at UNEA 5 Part 2. This is where UNEA resolutions were ratified. There were 14 of them. Number 14 is UNEA 514, as we call it, agreed to a resolution kicking off the negotiation process for a global treaty on plastic pollution. Next slide, please. This UNEA 5.2 session was held in Nairobi in Kenya from the 28th of Feb to the 2nd of March 2022. And UNEA Resolution 514 was agreed upon at this point. This said, end plastic pollution towards an international legally binding instrument, or what we call ILBI in short. This was establishing the INC process, Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, and Dr. Habu also touched upon it earlier. And the idea is to develop a legally binding instrument to end plastic pollution globally, including in the marine environment. It acknowledges 16 key actions that are needed, both binding, which is mandatory, and those which will be voluntary, which we haven't yet decided which will be mandatory and voluntary, but we'll get to that. Amongst four other things, the principles of the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development, as well as the national circumstances and capabilities. So they want to give some leeway, depending on your national circumstances and capabilities, what you're able to achieve or not achieve, or in what kind of timeline you're able to achieve them. So in blue dots, you will see the concluded sessions. So we started INC 1, which happened in Uruguay at Punta del Este. This was 28th of November to 2nd of December 2022. Long flight for me, 36 hours one way, but worth it to just get a sense of what was happening on the ground, what kind of engagement was taking place. It was largely procedural matters, but gave a sense of things to come. Then we moved to Paris on 29th of May to the 2nd of June. This was INC2. This was the second session of the INC process. And then we came to INC3, which was in Nairobi, Kenya, 13th to the 19th of November, 2023. We moved to North America, INC4 in Ottawa, Canada, which was 23rd to 29th of April 2024, which was right before the inaugural GCPRS meeting that we had last year. Then we came to INC5.1. It was supposed to be the concluding session, but because we did not have a breakthrough, there was no result which came out of it. It was decided that we will keep this session rolling. A second part is being put together, which is now going to take place from the 5th to the 14th of August 2025 at INC 5.2 as it's being called now. In between, there were some other related sessions which took place, some before INC 1, some before INC 5.1, but those were largely to fill in some gaps which were remaining. What is also expected is that the treaty will be opened once concluded, the negotiations, the treaty will be open for ratification at the Conference of Plenipotentiaries, or COP, as you would come to call it, in mid-2025. That's not going to happen now on time, of course, because we are still at INC 5.2 to come in August. Next slide, please. So, what has happened so far? INC 1, it was largely a procedural setup, but a zero draft is to be created. This mandate was given to the INC chair. Now, quick reminder that INC 1, 2, 3 had an INC chair, chairperson, and this was changed when we came to INC 4. So the INC 4 and 5.1 have had a different chair who will continue for 5.2. INC 2 in France, that was focused on discussions related to production, chemicals of concern in plastics and plastic products, EPR, and waste. So we were starting to kind of put some meat on the bones at this point in time. INC 3, we came to a revised draft basis for negotiations when that was mandated to the chair to produce for INC 4. This was the outcome of INC 3. And INC 4, we saw some major divergences starting to appear on core provisions. These were related to essentially finance or financing mechanism. What kind of financing mechanism would we adopt? Would we adopt an existing one under the IMF or World Bank, or do we create a new one specifically for plastic pollution? But there were other issues which remained, which was on production cuts for primary polymers, but also on chemicals of concern in plastic products, amongst other things. But don't get carried away with that, because there are still key issues, including related to definitions. We still do not have a single definition agreed on plastic pollution, for example, which is the key point that we are trying to discuss or negotiate in this treaty. Then we come to INC 5.1. The text was further streamlined, but there were lots of smokes and mirrors that were taking place here. The entire process got dragged. Nothing of substance came out of it. It was really a waste of resources, time, and money. But the LDG, or the legal drafting group, was finally established while it was mandated at the previous session. The chair's text was released, and this will now be used as a starting point for negotiations coming at INC 5.2. It's not the basis for negotiations, so that means you can still bring in new text from previously agreed or previously discussed material and bring it back to negotiate here. It's a starting point, not the basis for negotiations. So it cannot just be deleted from here. You can also add new text to it. So what can we expect coming to INC 5.2? Next slide, please. There are some key areas of convergence which are starting to appear, not finalized yet, but the options that were listed under these areas have started to reduce. So we have plastic waste management. So everybody agrees that this is a key central pillar that needs to be there in the text. Just transition, and this is related to downstream aspects on the social side. But also on the national action plans, that everybody, every country, every member of the INC process will have their own national action plans, which will be ratified by the committee, and then those people will also announce what kind of timelines they're putting in place for what action. Though major points of contention still remain. Cuts to primary plastic polymer production. Many of the developing countries are absolutely against it, and this includes India, who has made clear their stance that they are not going to support this. Chemicals of concern and product design criteria. There is a big push from the specifically the European states and their friends like Norway and others who want to push chemicals of concern and product design criteria into this mix. Now, I want to take a step back here and say that when we came to discussing the global framework for chemicals, or GFC, as a successor to SciChem, the European Union was hoping to get a treaty out of it, but what they got was a framework. Now, they were not able to achieve their success, so they're trying to push chemicals of concern into the Plastics Pollution Treaty, which majority of the country, or many countries believe, should not be fitting here because you have different forums to discuss that matter. Then the third point is on global financial mechanism versus voluntary support, which I've already mentioned earlier. And finally, binding obligations versus national discretion. I want to take a quick pause here on the chemicals of concern side. Dr. Habu was presenting earlier about Norway's paper. They have listed all of those chemicals, and now they're saying there are 16,000 chemicals, 4,000 of which have some toxic properties, which need to be figured out. ECHA, the European Chemical Agency, has listed 950 odd chemicals which are used as additives in plastics. So where is the 16,000 figure coming from if Europe's own chemical agency is saying 950? And the industry has done its own research. This figure is around 1,000 something. Now those 16,000 include chemicals which are no longer in production, and some of them are not even used in plastics. And the other issue is that this is using a hazard-based classification, not a risk-based classification. And this is the major difference that you will see. A hazard-based classification will tell you this product is hazardous, but it will not tell you that there are certain quantities or limits under which it's okay to be used as mandated by FDA or other authorities. So now moving on to the next steps, INC 5.2 is to finalize treaty text for 2025 ratification. Will this happen? Not happen? We can't say yet, but we will see what happens in Geneva. But if it does not happen, if we do not get success at INC 5.2, the Secretariat is telling us, INC Secretariat is telling us that if we do not get success, then we will have to go back to UNEA 7, the 7th session of UNEA Assembly, for a new mandate. And that is going to take place in 2027. So another 2 years will be lost in this whole process after spending so much money, resources, and time on it. We will see expert groups on finance and product standards continuing, and there are issues here. We are hearing rumors that the chair wants to swap some of the co-facilitators of these expert groups, which is contact group, which is going to be a disaster because those co-facilitators so far have been involved in different negotiation for upstream and downstream, and now if you swap them, it is going to create chaos. And the final text likely post INC5, consensus permitting. Again, I emphasize that point. Next slide, please. So, key points to note for INC 5.2. On the procedural side, member states will continue textual negotiations. The chair's text and original compiled text will be used as starting points for negotiation. The co-chairs of the CGs will work to find convergence on different issues and different articles where there is general agreement on options. As soon as we find only one option remaining for that particular article, that will then be sent to the legal drafting group to do the legal reviews and make sure that it is consistent, the text, the language is consistent, and there is no further divergence taking place or no overlaps taking place with other multilateral environment agreements. Where upon completion of the LDG's work, the final draft will be released, and the idea is that it'll likely be released post INC 5.2. So that could be the LDG taking a month or two to finish their work, or maybe longer, and post that. So expect the text to be coming out some point in December or thereabout. But the key challenges and scenarios, expect divergence to remain on the key issues. I've already mentioned Articles 3, 6, and 11. If matters cannot be resolved, contentious draft rules of procedure may be revoked, causing further delays. These draft rules of procedure, which have been currently adopted in provisional manner, include voting. And this is going to create a lot of chaos, because so far at no point under any UNEA or multilateral environment agreement has voting ever been used. Bilateral negotiations between opposing countries or blocs may resolve key issues. So you may see country delegations going into different rooms or into a huddle in the well and trying to find solutions or find some common ground where they can negotiate. And this means that diplomacy will be needed to break deadlocks, not actual substantive matters. So what's happening in the intercession period between 5.1 and 5.2? There is some global visibility on this matter. We had the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm COP ministerial meeting, where plastic treaty was prioritized as a topic. A lot of discussions took place, a lot of side events took place at that point. On the 5th of June was World Environment Day, and this year UNEA chose the theme of plastic pollution. And the 9th to the 13th of June was the UN OC, or UN Ocean Conference. It was calling for a timely finalization of the ILBI. Again, this was not a mandate given to us, but it was calling us to please hurry up and make sure that you finalize it. There have been different stakeholder dialogues taking place, including both the Geneva Beat Plastic Pollution Dialogues as well as the Geneva Executive Briefing, which took place on the 27th of May. And regional consultations continue, and they will also happen on the 4th of June, so the day prior to the start of the INC 5.2. And then finally, the heads of delegation meeting coming up on the 30th of June to 2nd of July, where informal alignment on text and strategy is being discussed, but the agenda has been put forth essentially as a negotiation, and many countries are not happy about that because there is no mandate to have negotiations at the HOD meeting. You need to have them at the sessions. And lastly, on the agenda is what should the Indian industry do in this scenario. So I've listed 4 key issues here for you guys to be aware of. First up is production caps. There are 100+ countries who back it. This does not mean that it'll be seeing the light of day in the final text that is agreed, but it is a very likely scenario that there might be some push to have production caps on the agenda. So what it means for you is future polymer demand could face policy limits, and at least in the short term to the mid-term, prices could rise, given that it could create a scenario or a feel that there's going to be a shortage in the coming months. Product design and waste, there is largely conversion that we need to have circularity principles included into the design of plastic products going forward. The legal text is already being shaped on that. So expect mandates coming up on recyclability, labeling, and things like that. Thankfully, India is already ahead of the curve in many of these areas. So there's less for you to do, but be ready that this could still be something that you could see coming in the coming months or years. Chemicals of concern, there is currently no consensus on it. The language is still vague, and it is still very likely that it may not be added to the final text, but a small degree of opportunity remains there. This could mean possible new restrictions on additives that you can use in your products. So you may have to make some pivots in your product designs when it comes to what kind of additives you use there. On the financing mechanism, it is still debated on whether we should have a global fund or versus national support. The cost of compliance may shift regionally. I don't expect too much to have to be an issue on you guys because you already have the EPR scheme in place now, the framework, and that is going to keep growing and evolving as we move forward. So what should you do? Anticipate regulation. Join the conversation. Make sure you're continuously in touch with the regulators, with the authorities, putting your point forward, engaging them in dialogue as much as you can. And plan for those scenario shifts. That is something more internal within your organizations that you will have to do. But you won't shape the treaty if you're only reacting to it. So time to get proactive, stay ahead of the curve, and make sure that you are always talking with each other and with others in the value chain and the value network. So I conclude my talk here. Thank you so much for your attention.